Say what? COP28, part 2. Yeah, it's pretty sad, I woke up at around 4 in the morning with a dream that gave me insight about how to explain my work in a different way that I've been doing for years. But anyways, this is COP part 2, and it is the UN Secretary General. One thing for me that I think is a sign that we can't self-correct is how this UN Secretary General pronounces the word fuel. And I've seen this a bit more and more. Like, I've seen it in other interviews where somebody's so happy that, their guest is there or whatever, they won't correct them on mispronunciation of a word. There's a word that, anyways, I'll film you another video of somebody else that does it for like almost all the time, and nobody corrects their pronunciation. And you wonder, like, does nobody have the right kind of rapport with, let's say, the Secretary General to be able to say, sir, or whatever title you're supposed to do? And again, for me, sir is good enough for anybody in the world. And I expect that level of respect. You don't have to give me more than sir. Sir, that word is pronounced fuel. Fuel. I'd like to practice it with you in your next speech before, and people will notice that you've corrected this. And it'll be a sign that, some sort of self-correction using language is possible for our species. So in a way, unconsciously, it gives us hope because people notice this change. And the fact that it's not happening, and it may never happen, it's nice that he travels places to see what it's like, the Antarctic or whatever. But the thing is he's contributed a lot of carbon doing that. Why don't you do something nice like learn how to pronounce fossil fuel? Not fossil fool. So it's not that he's doing that on purpose to kind of make fun of people. Nobody's ever corrected him. And he can hear other people pronounce it as fuel when they speak English. But if nobody says, I think that's enough time passing with you pronouncing it like that. Again, it's hard to take my species seriously, okay? So listen to this part.
Increase developing countries' access to private finance at reasonable costs. And we need to see a boost of the loss and damage fund. Across all these areas, you are here to discuss solutions. The diversity of people in attendance reminds us that we are all having a role to play.
So the role that we can all play relates to contraception. That's the one. If you can't go to COP, or you can go to COP, it's contraception. And they're still using language developing countries. Now, developing into what? Into high energy countries like the bad guys? Or what if the countries that are labeled as undeveloped are actually more environmentally friendly, or they actually more socially healthy in their culture? Isn't it time that we kind of call them the developed countries, or at least the least underdeveloped? And the underdeveloped would be like Norway, would be like Japan, would be like the USA, because I'm telling you, the level of maturity in these places is not very high when it comes to the maturation process. And of course, the maturation process is kind of required for this kind of problem solving that you think these big conferences will, and yet nobody is a developed Homo sapien? Hey, you don't have to listen to me, although if you listen to the next part of the speech, it sounds like my ideas would be welcome, except they're not.
Governments need to set their sights high and commit to climate ambition on a massive scale, supporting developing countries every step of the way. Governments must also provide the private sector with policy and regulatory certainty and predictability including placing a price on carbon. Businesses, investors, cities and regions need to help lead the shift away from fossil fuels to renewables. I call on them to present net zero commitments and accompanying transition plans fully aligned with the recommendations of the high-level expert group on net zero that was created 1 year ago.
Now, the kind of experts they get are not experts in sustainability. Sustainability, again, like I had to explain to my master's degree faculty when I fired them in that 26-page letter, it's a system science. But when they, have experts that talk about more sustainable type of technology or practices or behaviors or methods, but that actually is still taking more steps towards the Anthropocene than slowing it down with mitigation ventures, again, I think you're kind of a little bit disconnected from reality, and you kind of like to pick and choose the experts that help you with your little business as usual, because nobody's having the right conversation. He's not recommending that governments around the world have the right conversations. For example, is he saying, hey, let's first stop subsidizing these companies and let's make profits on the permits they have to do this, and then let's put a maximum in their profit for their shareholders, and their shareholders to know, okay, this is going to be this industry from now on. It's going to be, okay, you make 6% interest, that's it. You're in or out for that industry, and in fact, it shouldn't be just people in that industry. It should be in balanced portfolios as a transition. And the rest should be to pay for the damages that you've done, not just put a sticker, Solicitor General does not recommend you smoke these. This is not a society that has accountability in it when it still sells cigarettes and it still promotes, these kind of technologies that are not what a developed up here species that has this information supposedly about what's coming would act like. The other thing is if you're serious about the next kids, the next generation, then why is nobody talking about mitigation ventures and totally reinventing the school system as if you believe in the Anthropocene and what's coming for them in this lifetime of theirs? What they need to learn in school as mandatory courses, which should include life skills, which will help them have more real friends than enemies to collaborate with. And also about growing their own food, about how to, purify water, how to, manufacture their own masks and filters for things, how to, develop bicycle paths and more efficient vehicles that are not even electric, that just are human-powered energy, and systems to do so where there is majoritively public transport, not cars for your kids. And in this public transport, to put their bicycles, to put their skateboards. Some of them might be little scooters that are battery-driven that they can charge because there'll be solar panels on this public transport. This is, you need to train them for the future that is coming in the next couple of years. I'm not talking about in 100 years. It's coming now based on what you claim to know as experts or people at COP28. And still pretend like you care about your own kids? Yeah, something is kind of not right with your brains. And of course, my theory explains this.
This includes genuine decarbonization with detailed targets for 2025, 2030, and 2035.
He seems so tired of repeating
and avoiding dubious offsets or carbon credits in any scope.
He doesn't know how to go to the next level of being part of the solution. And of course, this series on COP of mine is going to explain what the next level looks like if you're an Homo sapien. And for him, it starts with pronouncing the word fuel properly. But, he'd like to do that, except that, man, he knows that he can't. That means he's stuck between a rock and a hard place in a system of a dysfunctional, failed primate where it, like if he says the wrong thing, even if it's the right thing to say, but it's not the right time of history to say it, which will never come. He knows this unconsciously. He knows, his body's breaking down inside just knowing that he's got a very powerful position that he's in, and yet there's nothing he can do in that position because, woohoo, proto-societies of the people primates kind of don't function in a healthy way. That's the Anthropocene.
We need scientists and innovators to keep researching and developing solutions to address climate change and drive renewables forward. The UN Scientific Advisory Board will help bring together expert advice on major global issues like climate change and translate breakthroughs into practical solutions. Finally, we need civil society, indigenous groups, and young people to keep up the pressure, to hold leaders to account, and help develop the concrete solutions we need to safeguard people and planet alike.
Okay, if that's right, if he claims this to be true, wouldn't he say, as leader, if you can consider his role a leader of the UN, is he is going to go visit and participate in protests in countries where they are arresting these indigenous or young people for protesting. He's not mentioning stop being violent, stop putting videos where you show common citizens committing crimes against the protests, the people that are protesting, and then not getting charges against them. Because I'm going to go there. And if somebody's violent with me, believe me, it's not going to go well for that entire nation. If he's the leader of something, he would say this, right? He would say, oh yeah, keep doing that. But at the same time, I'm going to notice these patterns where protesters are punished more and more severely for defending the very concept of life.
Let's pledge to act with ambition equal to the scale of the crisis. Let's deliver the renewable, sustainable, and equitable future people and planet deserve, and I thank you.
Now, what's easier between, killing more young generation working in mines for electric cars, or learning about family planning, contraception, condoms, even counting the cycle days, learning to enjoy sexuality in all the different ways you can without having a baby pop out in 9 months, where the parents don't have parenting skills and never will because they live in societies that even the richer ones are underdeveloped when it comes to parenting skills. So again, I'm looking at a species that can't have these conversations, and therefore a species that is extremely ill up here, and as a whole is handicapped at the levels of which it is in its own maturation process, self-actualization. It's actually so underdeveloped, and less than it was before.